you, everybody. So I have the distinct privilege and honor of introducing Miss Anne Trujillo, who is I'm not going to read everything, but an award-winning broadcast journalist. For those of you who have watched Channel 7, she's there every evening. So without further ado, I'm going to give the microphone here to Anne Trujillo.
Evening. I feel like I live at Channel 7, which is actually true to my business just in general. But thank you for having me here. I guess I'm here to talk about the secrets of success, but I think that you all know that there really are no secrets, and it's really a lot of hard work with some luck, and I think the benefit of some good timing all mixed in. But I've been at Denver 7 now for 33 years, and that's actually kind of a record for me. So I know that this picture was about 20 years ago. But I do know that there was a guy in Houston who's been on television in Houston for 50 years. So he has actually set a Guinness record. I'm not doing that. You are my witnesses right now. But 33 years at Denver 7 have been great for me personally and professionally. I have to tell you, I started as a general assignment reporter. I met my husband the very first day on the job there. He was a news photographer. I was assigned to work with him, and it took no time. He literally just started following me around the newsroom, chasing me around the newsroom. He actually says it goes the other way, but he's not here to defend himself, so I'm sticking to my story. We have two amazing children. They know everything about their lives through Channel 7 news stories, but we have a son who is a wonderful child. He's now working with Wells Fargo as a mortgage consultant, so he lives here in Denver. And by the way, I can vouch for him because I made him do my refi, and I put him through all the hoops because, as moms, that's what we do. We just want to make sure that they learn every possible scenario. So I tortured him, and it worked, so he learned. Our daughter, Kira, she lives in LA. She lives in West Hollywood. She's a comedy writer, and she works on a show on Fox. This is the only time I even say watch Fox, because she works for a show called The Last Man on Earth. So she is a comedy writer, so if you have any great ideas for comedy, she's always all ears. I love to tell her stories about the newsroom. She's constantly writing them down because there is so much that happens in a newsroom. And professionally, I've had some great moments at Channel 7. I picked up a couple of Emmys just last month, which is wonderful because I'm very proud of the work we do at Channel 7. I'm serious when I say we work really, really long days. And I know that's much like a lot of you when you have to call on customers. For us, when there's breaking news, I don't get the option of saying no. If it's a holiday, too bad. If it's Christmas Day, too bad. Even if it's your day off, too bad. Breaking news is breaking news. But I've had some great experiences working there. Got to go to the Broncos' last 2 Super Bowl appearances in San Francisco, New York. And I know you think that sounds really cool, but let me just tell you what my days were like. Those were 16-hour days, 2 weeks straight, in strange cities, dragging camera gear around from early in the morning until 10:30 at night, or if you're on the East Coast, 12:30 at night. Then lugging gear back to our hotel in a strange city where I had to share a hotel room with my producer because, I needed to spend every waking moment with that producer, much more time than I would ever spend with my husband, literally 24/7. Only to start all over again in the morning, bright and early, and of course, looking good on television and, sounding perky and, excited to be in whatever city it was in. But it was actually fun. It was fun to be there. And actually watch the Super Bowl in the parking lot. Don't actually get to go inside. It was fabulous. I was also at the opening of DIA. I don't know if many of you remember that. It was 20 years ago. The very cool thing about that is that I was on the very first plane that landed at DIA, and the trick to that is that my photographer and we drove down to Colorado Springs, where we with a whole lot of other news crews and dignitaries from Denver hopped on that plane, flew to DIA, and then we landed, and there was a band, and there were balloons. I still have that claim to fame, so that's pretty cool. I've interviewed a lot of interesting people, Oprah, Dr. Oz. I think some of you were with me when we were in New York for a WINS event, and Robin Roberts, one of my heroes, was there as a speaker. And just because of the nature of my business, I've been able to talk to Katie Couric, Diane Sawyer, George Stephanopoulos, Peter Jennings, great journalists, but I gotta tell you, we're a very interesting breed of people, that's for sure. Years ago, I interviewed a man who ended up being one of my all-time favorite authors, although at the time I didn't know it. His name is Paulo Coelho, and he wrote The Alchemist, if many of you are familiar with his work. What's great about him is that he really speaks to you about following your dreams and being positive. And one of his quotes is, "It's the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting." It's the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting. That's just one of his many brilliant things that really stick with me to this day. In fact, if you've ever gone through a hard situation, maybe a personal situation, maybe a work situation, and you really just need, our speaker earlier was talking about having a mantra. He has some words for me that really work as a mantra, and it goes like this: allow all the goodness of the universe to enter every cell of my body. I truly do use that in many, many situations. When you're sitting in a room, when you're in a tense meeting, when you're in a very difficult situation, those are the words that I say to myself, and they work for me. President Obama was another person who I got the opportunity to interview 8 years ago when he was then Senator Obama, and he was campaigning here in Denver, and I was the one reporter that was chosen to do a one-on-one interview with him. But think about this, I had 3 minutes. That's what they told me, you have 3 minutes to talk to President Obama. So, what do you ask somebody? First of all, how can you even have a meaningful conversation in 3 minutes? How do you make it memorable? So I decided, and maybe some of you remember this, I decided to ask him first about his grandmother. She was the one who raised him, and you may remember that at that time she was really, really sick. And it made national news, it was very public. So I decided that I would ask him about the health of his grandmother first. And then I asked him about some other policy issues, but I felt like that was the honest, decent thing to do first. But it went well. I don't even remember what the other policy issues were, but it just made me feel better that was how I handled that situation. Then there were the Colorado tragedies. Columbine High School, they were a theater shooting. And for both of those events, I was immediately called in. We worked those days 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And those are the images and those are the stories that really stick with you over the years. They just don't really ever leave you. And I know you saw them on television. You hear about them. But when you see them and you talk to people firsthand, that's what really wears on you. And people often ask me how I got through those situations. And truthfully, I feel very deeply that it was an honor to share information with Coloradans, information that's important to our communities, to give people answers when there doesn't seem to be any answers or any reasoning out there, or to maybe ask some of the questions that you might be asking. Whether it's a tornado watch or a criminal out hitting our neighborhoods or a missing child, or a new program that could be a positive change in someone's life, I take that job of sharing that information very seriously. I grew up here. I went to Littleton High School. I went to Mesa College, Mesa University. I also went to CU Boulder. And I think being from here really gives me that unique perspective that I bring to the news every night. Those tragedies at Columbine and Aurora, I knew I had to be there. I knew I had to be a calming voice for people to help understand what was really going on in our community. Events that really left us all hurting. And I know I did my job, and like so many of my fellow journalists, it was hard on all of us. You leave that scene and then you go home. And I think after you have accomplished your tasks of the day, because you know what to do, you know what steps to take through your job, but once you get home, that's when you get to absorb the information. That's when you get to think about the images. That's when the tears really start to flow. And it's hard, but at the same time, you also realize that your pain was nothing like what those families were dealing with or are still dealing with. It is emotional work. It can also be a very mundane job. That standing out in the snowstorm thing, saying, hey, it's snowing. We still go to work. I don't think anything of it anymore, but yes, we still do that. I thankfully don't get to do that anymore. Having a little seniority now means that I don't have to go out and stand in the snow anymore. But it's really part of the on-the-job training of the news business. And much of it I did learn on the fly because I really did not have a mentor. When I was growing up, I only saw men on television news. In fact, I only saw white men on television news. There were no women really to speak of when I first started in this industry, and certainly no minority women. And truthfully, a lot of women in the early years of TV news were just thrown onto television. Some of them were former beauty queens. Diane Sawyer's a former beauty queen, but a lot of women were put on television to begin with because they looked good. And what was unfortunate is they never had any of the formal training. So in the early years, there were few women in the newsroom. In front of the camera, behind the camera, there was no one really ever to show the ropes. And there's a book that I've been reading, and it's called The New Sorority. And it chronicles the careers of women trailblazers in the news industry. And I can relate to so much of it as I read this book. And there's one comment from Barbara Walters, who broke ceiling after ceiling, as you all know, for newswomen. And her words really take me back to the start of my career, because she says, back in 1976, and this was not that long ago for, if you're in my age group, she says, back in 1976, you could freely attack a woman for wanting to do a so-called man's job, especially in the holier-than-thou, men-only news departments. Walter said, many people still believe that women were supposed to know their place and stay in it. Well, I'm thankful to say that that has changed in my industry. In a recent study from RTDNA, which is the news business survey, women now make up 41% of newsroom employees. News directors make up about 30%. Women make up 30%. News station general managers, 20% are women. So that's 1 out of 5 TV stations in the country run by a woman. And while that is encouraging, obviously it's still a male-dominated industry. And when it comes to minorities in our newsrooms, we're talking 22%. So we have work to do. And you might be sitting there wondering, why is this important? Why should you care about this? Well, what I know about the TV business is like every other business. It's a competitive industry. People want choices. They don't want just one TV station to choose from, and so there has to be competition, and that's just what drives business. So which station you watch for news, I know it's a very personal decision. It could be because of the person who delivers the news to you nightly, who you relate to. It could be because of the stories that we choose to cover during our daily editorial meetings. It is our job to be the voice of the community, to be your eyes and your ears, and we constantly do research. And you tell us you want to know what's happening in your community. Because we know you can get international news, we know you can get sports news from all those hundreds of channels that you have on your TVs at home. But where do you find out news about your home? That's what we do. That means we also need to be in your community, living there, working there, going to school there, raising our children there. In fact, I tell all the new people at Denver 7, who, by the way, all at first live, you know where our building is, right there at Spear and Lincoln, and yeah. When they first come to town, they all live like right there, right by the TV station, literally like blocks away, and they walk home, and that's all they see. And that's boring, it's not healthy, right? That's not getting to know our community. So I tell them, they need to get out. They need to see what's going on. And one of the things that I love about my industry is that we do get to meet people from all different walks of life. It's like you doing cold call sales, for example. If the story's in Commerce City, we're going to Commerce City. If the story's in Hugo, we go to Hugo. If it's on the 16th Street Mall, we will go out there, we will talk to people, and we will listen to people. Because I think that one of the issues in our society today is that people do not leave their comfort zones. How do you know what other people feel and think, what their needs are, if you don't ever have a chance to talk with them, if you don't ever cross paths? It's like having a dinner party and serving steak only to find out that one of your guests is a vegetarian, right? I doubt if a vegetarian told me to tell you that joke. But I think that's kind of what's behind what's happening in our country right now. That's a lot of what's behind our racial division, even political division. We're not talking to each other. We don't listen to each other. and our social and business circles are small. So we need to hear voices from different viewpoints and bring those voices to you so that we can adequately cover our state. And I think that's why diversity in our newsroom is important to me. That's currently why I'm president of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists for the Colorado chapter. But in addition to NAHJ, I also served on the WINS board, the Women's Initiative for Networking and Success. Many of you may not know that Channel 7 used to be owned by McGraw-Hill, which has gone through major transformations, but I was one of the people on the ground floor of helping make the WINS chapter come to be in Colorado. And I truly can now point to women in my news industry who went through the WINS program, and I don't know if the Circles program still exists today, but I know women in my industry who are successful today, who have moved up in the news business because of the WINS program. So thank you to WINS leaders for keeping this organization going in our community. And I know I told you I did not have any mentors. In fact, I dealt with a lot of women who were actual roadblocks, who wanted to protect what they had, and were willing to help other women along the rugged path. And I felt it along the way. I cried a lot early in my career because I saw it, I felt it. I still see it firsthand. I hear it from my daughter every day in her industry in Hollywood. And I know plenty of you have seen it as well, and that's the kind of behavior that makes me angry. There is no excuse for it. I think that we can't control how others treat us, but we can start with ourselves, and we should be helping each other along the way. And I know it's hard for some women to find success, especially in male-dominated professions, but you just have to look at the numbers. And I don't even have to show you the numbers because you know what they are. Just recently, Pat Summitt of Tennessee, she was the winningest Division I college basketball coach of all time. She just recently died. She was 64 and she had Alzheimer's. And I'm not a big basketball fan, but her death made news. And what struck me was what her peers and athletes said about her. And aside from describing her as courageous, loving, and compassionate, she helped put women's basketball on the map and give female athletic coaches the salaries they deserved. And here are some of the things that she said that really struck me. She said, on success, here's how I'm going to beat you. I'm going to outwork you. That's it. That's all there is to it. Outwork you. On hiring other women, she said, I think athletic directors should hire people that can take over their program, recruit, and be competitive in the women's game. And it doesn't bother me. Obviously, if a man and a woman have equal experience and abilities, I'm going to hire a woman because we don't have as many opportunities. Now, I know I was one of the lucky ones because I was given an opportunity, and that was at KSTF, Scottsbluff, Nebraska. Yeah. And I owe thanks to William Brennan, who very bravely gave a girl with no experience her first TV job, and I was really bad, I gotta tell you. I had gone to CU Boulder. I studied journalism, but there was no such thing as an electronic journalism unit at CU Boulder at the time, meaning I learned nothing about television. Nothing about cameras, nothing about writing for television, which is very different from writing for print. Nothing about producing newscasts, much less how to talk in front of a camera. I did not learn any of those things at CU. Now the good news is things at CU have changed dramatically. In fact, I now serve on a committee at CU's broadcast journalism program where I get the opportunity to review students' work, so they are better prepared for the real world. And I wish somebody had done that for me, because I did a lot of stumbling on my way. But clearly something must be working at CU because a study just released shows that 81% graduates find jobs within a year of graduating. 96% say they are satisfied with their education, and best of all, CU grads earn about $76,000 a year. That's pretty cool. That is not what I made in Scottsbluff, I can tell you. Here I thought I was entering this glamorous profession. I was offered $10,000 a year at my very first job. I couldn't even start to pay off my student loans. I mean, think about that, $10,000 a year. That was just barely enough to pay my rent. Maybe buy a cup of coffee on occasion. The good news is I didn't eat much, and I actually hit my weight goal that year. And by the way, I was still not a college graduate at that time because I did not finish my degree until 5 years ago. it was just unfinished business for me. I had left CU in the middle of my senior year to take a chance, and I took that job in Scottsbluff, in a city I literally had never ever heard of. A city where I knew no one, a city surrounded by corn in every possible direction, which I don't even eat, by the way. A TV job where there were two of us in the newsroom, me and my co-anchor, and that meant we literally did everything. And so I wasn't just the anchor, I was the producer, I was the writer, the photographer, I was the sports director. My co-anchor was also the weather guy. We each worked 6 days a week, and one day a week we had to work solo so that the other person could have a day off. And that meant I did the entire newscast all by myself, and news, weather, sports, and I was really bad. It was really funny. You know. Do the news and go, okay, now I'll be back with weather in just a minute. I'll be back with sports in just a moment. So you really kind of get that bad stuff out of the way very quickly. So thank goodness I knew no one in Scottsbluff. So I thought I was pretty horrible at it, but thankfully someone saw me on television because I was offered a job in Omaha, Nebraska within 6 months. I didn't have to do sports, didn't have to do weather anymore. I was actually offered a job doing the noon newscast as a reporter for the evening news, and I actually doubled my salary, which was huge news for me. So I got to work with real photographers, real producers, but my goal was always to come back home to Colorado. This is where I wanted to be. Thankfully, 33 years ago I did that, and boy, the world has really changed. Here we are in the richest country in the nation, the most industrialized nation. Every day scientists come up with some cures and answers. We have people living on the International Space Station. Yet isn't it interesting that the biggest problems we have today are still rooted in some of the oldest, most basic problems of human societies. We are still afraid of people who are different from us, who act different from us, who have different views about how to worship God or live their lives. And I know everyone in this room is different, and I would bet money that one thing we all have in common is that we all care about our kids, we all care about our future, and we want to leave this world in good hands. I recently spent some time with a woman by the name of Casey Johnson, and you may know her as Casey Rootsaker. She was a student at Columbine High School and was shot that day on April 20th, 1999, and she now lives in Highlands Ranch. She has 3 beautiful children. She's happily married, and she has a massive scar on her shoulder, which was blown out by a gunshot. She has scars on her face where she was grazed by a bullet. And I met her years ago. It was not because of the Columbine tragedy, amazingly enough. It was 10 years ago. And Casey became a nurse because of what she had experienced at Columbine. And she turned that tragedy into a positive because she wanted to do what others had done for her. I think she had a mantra similar to mine, let all the goodness of the universe enter every cell of your body. Her own mantra of positive thinking to help her get through something so horrendous. I met her at a time when my own father was in the hospital. He was dying of cancer. She took care of him. She would allow her patients to see her scars because she knew that that would take their minds of whatever was ailing them. And I will never forget Casey, and I am forever grateful to her for taking care of my dad. She's an amazing woman who loves life, and she's an example of someone who has been through something so horrendous that would make most of us crumble. She's standing strong. She's raising her family, unfortunately no longer able to work as a nurse because of her physical abilities. And I know she still has her struggles, and I think we all do in some sense. But do you know what is the hardest thing for her to do day in and day out? And that is to drop her children off at school. That is her greatest fear. And that's what we have to change for all our sake. And that is where an organization called Rachel's Challenge comes in. This is a project I've been working on at Denver 7, and hopefully you've seen some of it on our air. Rachel Scott was 17. She was the first person shot at Columbine. And what you might not know about her is that she was a writer. She had several diaries that she kept before her death, and she was wise beyond her years. Do you know that she knew she would die young? She would go around and tell her friends, I'm not going to live long. But she also said to her friends, I am going to have an impact on the world. In fact, in 1998, the year before, she wrote, "This will be my last year, Lord, thank you." Now, I've spent a lot of time talking with her dad, Daryl. He has told me multiple stories about Rachel and her writings and her dreams. After her death, her dad and her sister were in Rachel's room. They found on the back of Rachel's dresser an outline of her hands and her writing inside the outline of her hands. And it said, "These hands belong to Rachel Joyce Scott and will someday touch millions of people's hearts." She also wrote an essay called My Ethics, My Codes of Life, where she talked about how it's important for all of us not to judge others and really get to know people and show kindness and compassion to all. Well, her family, after her death, heard so many stories from friends at Columbine, stories they didn't know about how she went out of her way to talk to other kids at school, to the new kids at school, kids with disabilities, kids who were treated differently. And through her writings, her family, they read about how she wanted to start this chain reaction of kindness and compassion. So that is what is known as Rachel's Challenge. That's our project at Channel 7. That's the message that her dad and others are spreading around the world. In fact, Rachel's Challenge is happening literally around the world. They touch millions, and I mean easily 5 million kids have heard this message. And that is the impact of Rachel Joyce Scott, touching millions of people's hearts. And it is happening. And teachers are going through training, and they're saying, I actually love teaching again because of Rachel Joyce Scott. You know what you get from TV stations. The good, the not so good, a lot of bad sometimes, day in and day out. And through these stories, these Rachel's Challenge stories, I feel like we are able to do more. These are the stories that are good for our souls that people need to hear. And earlier I told you I don't really know the secrets to success, but all I can tell you is what I have learned over the years. I've learned to be like Pat Summitt, outwork your competition. Barbara Walters, don't be afraid to shatter glass ceilings. Casey Johnson, be strong and let your setbacks make you stronger. And Rachel Scott, to be an instrument of kindness and compassion. Because you know, reputation is everything. And before I go, I will leave you with one last piece of advice from Paulo Coelho, my favorite author. There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve, and that is the fear of failure.